Breaking news, Iran's top diplomat says he will travel to Moscow today to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Fans are excited to personally congratulate them for making history. No ECHL team has ever won 3 straight Kelly Cups, and that means we can have a party like this here tonight. You can see the floor is packed with fans. The town square clock was removed before Milton, so it will make its way back eventually, but we just don't know when. But it was safely removed, so don't worry, the clock isn't going anywhere for a while. So we want to make our way, Haley, we're going to make our way over to the sand here. So let me check with the cheerleaders behind me. How excited are we for tonight? Safe to say the excitement level's pretty high. Take a look at the area circled here on this New York Times release photo where it shows the trail of the bullet after it pierces former President Donald Trump in the ear. FGCU Athletic Director Colin Hargis feels the athletic department has already started to move past this, as the 3-week recruiting ban that was put on the men's tennis program happened back in January, and that there are no forward-facing penalties in this case. Only one member of the Maurice family won the championship. That was Jake, the play-by-play announcer for the Florida Everblades. He won his 2nd straight Kelly Cup this summer. Now for his dad, Paul, the head coach of the Florida Panthers, he finally got his hands on the Stanley Cup. When you're in the car trying to figure out what podcast to listen to, there are seemingly endless options. In sports, many current and former athletes are using the platform to talk about their experiences. So while Xavier McLean is playing basketball at FGCU, he's sharing what that's like with his podcast.
This is another episode of True Talk.
Dwayne Wade recorded the game-winning steal and bucket against Chicago, jumped on the scorer's table, and declared, "This is my house." That moment is forever immortalized with this statue of the Heat legend. Playing here in Assembly Hall may be daunting to some, but not for the FGCU women's basketball team. They come into Indiana ready for the moment. They've been in this spot before, and they're ready to bust some brackets again. For Nico boys, it's hard to beat playing under the Friday night lights.
My whole life, I always thought, football's my thing. Like, this will always be my thing.
The former Barron Collier High School quarterback was hoping to make the most of his senior season, but Boyce learned early on,
Can't take anything for granted in the blink of an eye. I mean, your life can change forever, or your life could be gone.
In Barron Collier's season opener against Immokalee, Boyce hurt his right leg.
Going into week 2, the practices going into the week 2 game against Naples, I just noticed it wasn't really feeling right, and it just kept building up more and more, getting worse and worse. But still, I didn't feel like I couldn't play that game.
He started the rivalry matchup with Naples, but Boyce noticed he couldn't sprint, and the swelling only got worse.
After the game, I was just in excruciating pain. Took a bunch of medication to try and relieve the pain. Nothing was working, so that's when we went into the ER and we found out it was compartment syndrome.
Boyce was rushed into surgery that night.
And when I woke up from that first surgery, the doctor and my parents ended up explaining to me that the rhabdomyolysis, which is the bad protein that can get in your blood, traveled to my kidneys, and yeah, it threatened my life.
Boyce needed a second surgery, and doctors told him he wouldn't play football again.
Felt very lost, not knowing what to do, just feeling like my life was over, because like I said, I've played football all my life.
After another surgery, Boyce went home, learning there's a chance he can play again. So Boyce talked with his parents about suiting up again.
My parents kind of just reminded me and put that reminder in the back of my head that, I've been playing all my life, and, I've been working at this all my life to get to a certain destination, and I'm not there yet, so yeah, and I definitely want to be there.
That destination was to play in college.
I feel like I have a lot of people to prove wrong. Nothing against, coaches that have recruited me in the past or anything, but I feel like I've always been doubted in some way.
Boyce went to work, doing drills with his right leg wrapped or in a boot while on his scooter. He worked with his longtime trainer, Jackson Bazil.
The lower body's not working right now, but let's go ahead and continue to work with the upper body so you could see, like, man, I still have some muscles basically to help you mentally as you stay active. Staying in bed doing nothing was not going to be good for him.
New Hampshire pulled their offer to Boyce after the injury, but his determination and recovery caught the attention of Anna Maria College in Massachusetts, and he was offered a football scholarship.
My confidence is through the roof now that I'm committed as well. It's very exciting to know that I get a second opportunity to, make something out of this sport.
A second chance at life and a second chance at football. Zach Oliveri, Wink Sports.
Carpet, I put it in a month ago. It's all out in the street now.
William Rogers has gone through this too many times, cleaning out the damage of his Island Park home. He did it after Ian.
And the whole house had 8 feet of water in it during Hurricane Ian. So we lost everything. It was just a shell of a house. My whole road is underwater.
Then again for Helene. And now, after Milton.
I've always lived in a house that's perfectly clean and neat and put together, and nothing ever happens in it like what's happening here in this house. So I've been living like a homeless person for 2 years.
As Milton sent water rushing into his home, William hoped to save his home.
Gone. The whole Gulf of Mexico's in my house.
That's William, calling into our continuous coverage Wednesday night.
It's up to my ankles, but I'm elevated.
As soon as I lifted my foot to gauge how high it was.
I just got electrocuted.
As the call went on, it became clear that William needed to get himself, his wife, and his dog out of the house.
It might be time to go and check the house later when the water goes down.
We're going to let you go now so you can get on the phone and call for help.
Oh, yeah.
But there was no need to.
The USAR team was watching Wink News, and they were informed via your newscast that the subject needed assistance.
Using their high water vehicle, San Carlos Park firefighters and USAR made their way to William's home. John Milsetich was one of those who responded to that call.
The road was completely underwater, so we basically used the mailboxes and the power poles as our guidelines for making it to the street we needed to go to. From there, we backed up to the residence, the front window, where the subject was signaling us with a flashlight.
Then they got William, his wife, and his dog Jules out through the window.
I'm glad that Wink News called up and made me get out of the house, because I probably wouldn't have called them after we got offline.
William is safe, but his house needs to be fixed once again. Zach Oliveri, Wink News. FGCU athletics have been a constant on the national stage in recent years, especially in sports like women's basketball and volleyball, who are fixtures in their sports postseasons. But when it comes to Division I college athletics, the only constant is change. One of the most significant changes comes from the House v. NCAA settlement.
It's going to create a new dynamic for college athletics. It's going to create a new dynamic for Division I.
The settlement got preliminary approval last week. If finalized, the settlement forces the major conferences to pay $2.78 billion in damages to current and former student athletes and set up a revenue-sharing system that allows schools to distribute more than $20 million to student athletes starting next year. Is this an opportunity where the rich are just going to keep getting richer in college athletics with the settlement?
It could. It could. I think it's going to be really interesting when you look at college athletics at the highest level, right? When you talk about the Power Four conferences, the interesting dynamic for them when you talk about revenue sharing, when you talk about the House settlement payments, things of that nature, they're potentially staring down $20 to $30 million a year that they're going to have to generate. So the rich are definitely going to have an opportunity, right? The Power Four are definitely going to have an opportunity to generate and do more, but it's also going to cost them much more to operate at that highest level.
Colin Hargis is the athletic director at FGCU. Even though his department is not in a Power Four conference, they are still included in this settlement. Division I schools that don't have football will pay 12% of the damages.
The initial estimates that we've had from an ASUN perspective have been just shy of $300,000 a year. And again, those were the initial.
For how long?
For 10 years.
That's an estimated total of $3 million. How does that factor into the athletic budget for FGCU?
Yeah, we have to plan for it, and it's unfortunate. In a perfect world, we wouldn't be part of that, right? We wouldn't have to pay the debt of others, essentially. But on the other side of that, if and when the settlement goes through, what we look at holistically, right, in conversations with my peers and conversations with the conference office, the settlement will provide stability, a little bit of stability for us on a national landscape, right, from an FGCU Division I athletic department perspective. It can provide us a little bit of stability for the next decade.
Just heard the Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, along with the Joint Chiefs of Staff Dan Kane, giving an update on Operation Midnight Hammer last night. And we know that it took 25 minutes to execute that attack, and that the U.S. made it clear that they do not seek war, but will act swiftly when their interests are threatened. Hurricane Milton turned the Friday night lights off last week, but this week, we're back, and it's good to see you. I'm Wing Sports reporter Zach Oliveri. The Republicans currently have 52 seats in the Senate. Even with the announcement of Republican Carrie Lake losing in her race against Democrat Ruben Gallego in Arizona, the party still gained at least 3 seats this election. You might want to be careful where you send your food delivery driver. Make sure that pin is exactly right, because one DoorDash driver got lost and accidentally drove onto the Chicago O'Hare International Airport tarmac. Look at your screen here. A 36-year-old man mistakenly drove past a gate and headed into a restricted area. You see his car right there. He ended up parked next to a grounded plane on the tarmac. Chicago aviation officials say the May incident didn't cause any disruptions to operations, and officials at DoorDash say it appears the driver simply got lost while making the delivery. We spoke with a local immigration attorney who says families need to be prepared. That means gathering personal documents and having copies of everything, which is the first step of obtaining a bond or anything that releases you back into society if you do get detained. So thinking of running your own chicken coop to cope with the rising prices? Well, that's gonna cost you a lot of bucks. As you can see here, $400, $400, $500, and even $1,300 just to buy the coop. Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final ended in dramatic fashion as the Florida Panthers put themselves on the board in this series by winning it in double overtime.